Daniel had seen his sons break 12 nannies in 2 years, but nothing prepared him for what he found when he came home early that Tuesday. It was the silence. No screaming, no chaos, no broken toys scattered like landmines across his $15 million penthouse floor. Just peace. The kind that felt wrong, foreign, like walking into someone else's home by mistake. He dropped his briefcase, the sound echoing through marble halls that suddenly felt too big, too cold, too empty of the one thing money couldn't buy. "Boys?" His voice cracked in the quiet. Nothing. His heart started hammering. Where were they? The playroom? The game room? The movie theater he'd built just to keep them busy while he worked 16-hour days building empires they'd inherit but never asked for? Room after room, Daniel searched. Kitchen spotless, living room untouched. The panic climbed his throat like smoke. Then he heard it. Soft, almost like singing, but not quite. Coming from the last door at the end of the hall. He pushed it open. 3 little boys, on their knees, hands folded like birds resting, and beside them sat Lucy, the cleaning woman he barely remembered hiring. Her eyes were closed. Her voice was gentle. And his sons, his wild, broken, angry sons, were praying. Daniel's knees nearly gave out. 4 years. 4 years since he'd cried. Not at the funeral, not at the hospital. Not even when they lowered Sarah into the ground, while rain hammered the earth and his boys screamed for their mama. But standing there, watching his children talk to God like he was someone who actually listened, something inside him shattered. The tears came fast and silent. He gripped the doorframe to stay standing. And not one of them saw him. They just kept praying, like they'd been doing this all along, like they'd found something he'd lost the night his wife died. Before we go further, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a story about a rich man and a poor woman. It's about what happens when money stops working, when control becomes a cage, when the only way forward is to let someone else carry what you've been dragging alone. Hit subscribe, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and buckle up, because this story is about to take you somewhere you didn't expect. Daniel didn't plan to come home early. The deal in Miami closed 3 hours ahead of schedule, and for once, he didn't want to sit in another hotel room ordering room service and pretending he wasn't drowning. He told his driver to head straight to the penthouse in Dallas, didn't call, didn't text, just wanted to walk through his own front door and feel something other than tired. The elevator opened directly into his home, top floor, panoramic views of the city, glass and steel, and silence. Always silence. But today, the silence felt different. Heavier. Like walking into a library after closing time. He set down his laptop bag. Boys? No answer. He checked the kitchen first. Empty. The balcony? Nothing. The game room with the $1,000 racing simulator he bought them for Christmas that they used twice. Still dark. His pulse quickened. Luke? Max? Sam? Still nothing. He moved faster now. Down the hallway. Past Sarah's studio. The one he kept locked because walking in felt like drowning. Past the guest rooms no one ever used. One door left. The one at the end. The nursery they'd converted into a reading room after Sarah died because none of them could stand to look at baby pictures anymore. Daniel reached for the handle. Hesitated. Some instinct told him that what was on the other side would change everything. He turned the knob. 3 boys. His boys. On their knees, in a half circle. Hands clasped. Eyes closed. And sitting cross-legged in front of them, holding Sam's hand, was Lucy. Her voice was soft but clear. Even when we're scared, even when we're sad, we can still say thank you. For the sun. For today. For each other. Luke spoke first. The oldest by 3 minutes, the angriest by miles. Thank you that I didn't punch anyone today. Max, the middle one, the quiet thinker. Thank you that my stomach doesn't hurt anymore. And Sam, the baby, the one who still wet the bed sometimes and cried in his sleep. Thank you for Lucy. Please don't let her leave like everyone else. Daniel's chest tightened, his vision blurred. He took a step back, hand over his mouth, trying to breathe through the sudden weight crushing his ribs. When was the last time his son said thank you for anything? When was the last time they spoke without yelling? When was the last time they looked peaceful instead of angry? He backed into the hallway, made it to the bathroom, locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub, and let 4 years of grief pour out of him in silent, shaking sobs. Sarah's voice came back to him, clear as if she were standing right there. Money can't hug them, Danny. It can't tuck them in. It can't tell them everything's going to be okay. He'd told her she was wrong, that security mattered, that building something meant sacrifice. That the boys would understand when they were older. But she'd just smiled, sad, knowing. They won't remember the money, baby. They'll remember whether you were there. In why? He hadn't been there. Not really. Not since the accident. Not since that Tuesday morning, when she kissed him goodbye and drove to her sister's house and never made it past the intersection. A truck ran a red light. Sarah died on impact. And Daniel died right alongside her. He just kept breathing. The boys became wild after that. Feral, almost. Luke broke everything he touched. Max stopped eating. Sam stopped sleeping. They cycled through nannies like tissues. 12 in 2 years. Each one quit. Each one left them more broken than before. Daniel threw money at the problem. Therapists, tutors, a live-in nurse. None of it worked. His mother, Grace, kept telling him it was just grief. That time would fix it. That structure and discipline were the answer. But time didn't fix it. It just made the silence louder. Then one Friday afternoon, the agency sent Lucy. No interview. No references. Just a last-minute replacement because everyone else refused to come back. She was 28. Quiet. Wore an old jacket and carried a canvas bag with a broken zipper. She didn't smile much. Didn't ask questions. Just said, "Where do you keep the mop?" Daniel barely looked at her. He was on a conference call, waved her toward the supply closet, and forgot she existed. The boys didn't. Luke locked her in the bathroom. Max poured juice in her shoes. Sam threw her phone out the window. They wanted her gone. Everyone left. Why should she be different? But Lucy didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't cry. She just sat on the floor in the hallway and waited. When they finally stopped throwing things, she looked at them and said, "You can be mean to me. You can ignore me. You can try to make me leave, but I'm not going anywhere." Luke narrowed his eyes. "Everyone says that." "I know," Lucy said. "But I mean it." That night, she did something no one else had tried. She moved their beds together, side by side, like a raft. Then she sat on the edge and told them a story about 3 wolves who lost their pack and had to find their way home together. By the end, Max had crawled closer. Sam had stopped kicking the wall, and Luke, still pretending not to care, was listening. Grace didn't approve. "She has no credentials," she said over dinner that Sunday. "No training, no experience with children." Daniel shrugged. "She's just here to clean." But even as he said it, something felt off, because that morning, he'd walked past the boys' room and heard laughter. Real laughter. The kind that used to fill the house before Sarah died. Lucy lasted longer than anyone expected. A week. Then 2. Then a month. The boys still fought. Still cried. Still tested her every single day. But she stayed. And slowly, quietly, something began to shift. She started noticing things. Luke hated loud noises, so when storms came, she sat in the hallway and hummed old songs until he fell asleep. Max loved drawing, so she bought him a sketchbook with her own money. Sam collected bottle caps, so she gave him a shoebox and helped him organize them by color. She didn't preach, didn't lecture, but every now and then, before meals, she'd close her eyes and whisper a quiet prayer. The boys noticed. They didn't join, but they watched. One afternoon, Sam asked her, "Do you really think someone's listening?" Lucy looked at him. "Really looked. I do, even when it's hard to believe." "Why?" "Because I've needed him too many times not to." Sam thought about that. Then he crawled into her lap and stayed there until dinner. By the 3rd week, the boys' teacher called Daniel at work. "I don't know what's changed at home," she said, "but Luke hasn't been in a fight all week. Max is eating lunch again." And Sam asked if he could lead the class prayer. Daniel sat in his office, staring at the skyline, and realized he hadn't been home for dinner in 6 days. That night, he got back late. The penthouse was dark, except for one light in the kitchen. Lucy was cleaning up. She looked up, surprised. "Mr. Cole, I didn't know you were coming home." He nodded, set down his briefcase. "How are they?" "Good. Really good. They listened to you." Lucy shrugged. "I listened to them first." Daniel opened his mouth to say something. Anything. But the words stuck. so he just nodded and walked to his room. But he didn't sleep. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the last time his sons had looked at him the way they looked at her. Like he was safe, like he mattered. He couldn't remember. Lucy didn't do anything dramatic. No grand gestures, no speeches. She just showed up, every single day. And slowly, quietly, the boys began to heal. She taught them how to plant seeds in small pots on the balcony. Tomatoes, basil, little green things that needed water and sun and patience. You have to show up every day, she told them, even when it feels like nothing's happening. Because growing takes time. Luke rolled his eyes. This is dumb. But the next morning, he was the first one out there with the watering can. She taught them how to fold their own laundry, how to make their beds, how to say sorry and mean it. Small things, ordinary things. But to boys who'd been raised by staff and screens, it felt like magic. And at night, before bed, she'd kneel with them and pray. Not long prayers, not fancy words, just simple, honest conversations with God, thanking Him for the day, asking Him to help with the hard stuff, telling Him about the hurt that still lived in their chests like stones. Luke prayed for his anger. Max prayed for his fear. Sam prayed that his dad would come home more. Lucy heard that one and felt her heart crack a little. Daniel still wasn't around much, still buried in work, still convinced that providing was the same as being present. But the house didn't feel as cold anymore. The boys didn't fight as much. And one morning, Daniel walked past their room and heard them laughing. He stopped, stood there, listened. Luke was reading a joke from a book, Max was drawing something, Sam was building a tower out of blocks, and Lucy was sitting in the middle of it all, smiling, her presence as steady as gravity. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. Something sharp and painful and unfamiliar. Jealousy? No. Worse. Regret. That night, he came home early. For the first time in months. The boys looked shocked. Dad? Luke blinked. Why are you here? Daniel tried to smile. I live here. Yeah, but you're never here. The words hit harder than any punch. Daniel sat down at the table. I know. I'm sorry. Sam climbed into his lap. Just like that. No hesitation. Can you stay for dinner? Yeah, Daniel said, throat tight. I can stay. Lucy made spaghetti. Nothing fancy. Just pasta and sauce and bread. But sitting there, eating with his sons, Daniel realized he hadn't done this in over a year. Hadn't sat at this table. Hadn't asked about their day. Hadn't been present. After dinner, he helped clean up. Lucy looked at him, surprised. You don't have to do that, Mr. Cole. Daniel, he said. And, yes, I do. That night, he tucked the boys into bed. Awkwardly. Clumsily. But he did it. And when he left their room, he found Lucy in the hallway. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For seeing them when I couldn't. Lucy looked at him for a long moment. They just needed someone to stay. Daniel nodded. Swallowed hard. I'm going to do better. Good, Lucy said. And she meant it. But doing better wasn't as easy as deciding to. Because the next morning, Grace showed up unannounced. She walked in with her designer handbag, and her perfectly styled hair, and her sharp eyes that missed nothing. You're home, she said to Daniel, surprised. Trying to be. Grace looked around. The boys were on the balcony with Lucy, watering their plants, laughing, covered in dirt, happy. This is inappropriate, Grace said quietly. What is? You know what? She lowered her voice. She's the help, Daniel. Not family. She's more family than anyone else has been. Grace's jaw tightened. You're confused. You're grieving. You're projecting your need for Sarah onto someone who's just doing her job. She's not just doing her job, Daniel said, voice hard. She's saving my sons. She's a maid, Daniel, a maid. He turned to face her fully. She's the only reason they're still okay. The only reason they eat, sleep, laugh, pray. She didn't leave when it got hard. She stayed. Where were you? Grace flinched. That's not fair. Neither is this. She left without saying goodbye. But Daniel knew it wasn't over. Grace didn't let things go. She fixed them, and in her mind, Lucy was the problem. 3 days later, Lucy got a phone call. A woman's voice. Professional. Polite. Miss Porter, this is Helen from the Riverside Agency. We have an urgent placement request in California. Triple your current salary. Family of 2. Much easier workload. Are you interested? Lucy frowned. I didn't apply for anything in California. Oh, well, the opportunity is there if you'd like to consider it. Lucy hung up, but something about the call felt wrong. Too convenient. Too perfect. That night, Grace invited Lucy to lunch. Just the two of them. Lucy didn't want to go, but she did. Out of respect. Out of fear of what might happen if she didn't. The restaurant was expensive. All white linen and crystal glasses. Grace was already seated when Lucy arrived. She didn't stand, just gestured to the chair across from her. Thank you for coming, Grace said, smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes. They ordered, made small talk. Then Grace slid an envelope across the table. What's this? Lucy asked. An opportunity. Lucy opened it. Inside was a check. $200,000. Her breath caught. That's for you, Grace said. To start over. Somewhere new. No strings. Just a clean break. Lucy stared at the check. More money than she'd see in 5 years. Maybe 10. Money that could change everything. Pay off debt. Help her mom. Buy a car that didn't break down every month. But, I can't take this, Lucy said quietly. Why not? Because it's not about the money. Grace leaned forward. Everything's about money, dear. That's how the world works. Not for me. You think you're special to them? You think this is real? Grace's voice stayed calm, but the edge sharpened. You're temporary. You're a comfort during grief. When Daniel moves on, and he will, where does that leave you? Lucy folded her hands in her lap. Steady. Calm. But her heart was racing. I didn't come into their lives to take anything. I came to give. And I'm not leaving unless they ask me to. Grace studied her. Then she picked up the check and tucked it back into her purse. You're making a mistake. Maybe, Lucy said, but it's mine to make. She left the restaurant with her head high and her hands shaking. Because she'd just turned down more money than she'd ever seen. And part of her, the scared part, the part that grew up without enough, was screaming that she was an idiot. But the bigger part, the part that had watched 3 broken boys become whole again, knew she'd made the right choice. That night, Daniel found her on the balcony. She was watering the plants. The boys were inside watching a movie. My mother talked to you, he said. It wasn't a question. Lucy nodded. What did she offer you? Doesn't matter. Lucy. She turned to face him. She offered me money to leave. I said no. Daniel's jaw clenched. How much? Enough. He stepped closer. Why did you say no? Lucy looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, she let herself say the truth out loud. Because I love them. And I don't know how to walk away from people I love. The air between them changed. Shifted. Became something neither of them was ready to name. Daniel's voice came out rough. You're not just the maid. I know. I don't know what you are, but you're not that. Lucy swallowed hard. What am I then? He didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the answer scared him more than anything else. So he just stood there, close enough to touch her, far enough to stay safe. Stay, he said finally. Please, don't let her scare you off. I'm not going anywhere, Lucy whispered. And she meant it. But neither of them knew that the hardest part was still coming. Because the next morning, Lucy woke up feeling wrong. Dizzy, nauseous. She ignored it. Made breakfast. Helped the boys get ready for school. But by noon, she was in the emergency room. The doctor came in looking serious. Miss Porter, when was your last checkup? I don't know. A while. You have a heart condition. It's been untreated for a long time. We need to admit you immediately. Lucy's world tilted. I can't. I have to get back. The boys need you alive, the doctor said firmly. You're not going anywhere. When Daniel got the call, he left a board meeting mid-sentence, drove to the hospital, doing 80 in a 50, found her in a bed, hooked up to machines, looking small and scared and trying to smile anyway. I'm okay, she said. You're not, Daniel said, voice cracking. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? I didn't know. He sat down beside her, took her hand. You're not doing this alone. Do you hear me? Whatever this costs, whatever you need, I'm here. Lucy's eyes filled with tears. You don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was fierce. You stayed when everyone else left. You loved my sons when I didn't know how. You think I'm going to let you disappear now? Daniel, I love you, he said. The words fell out before he could stop them. Raw. Unplanned. True. I don't know when it happened. But I do. And I can't lose you. Lucy's breath caught. You can't love me. I'm just, if you say the maid, I swear to God. She laughed. A wet, broken sound. I was going to say scared. He leaned closer. So am I. Your mother. Can deal with it. The boys already love you more than anything. What if I'm not enough? Daniel pressed his forehead to hers. You're everything. And there, in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and fear, something shifted. Lucy stayed in the hospital for a week. Daniel visited every day, brought the boys after school. They drew pictures and taped them to the walls. Luke brought her a flower he picked from the balcony. Max wrote her a story. Sam just crawled into the bed beside her and held her hand. When she finally came home, the penthouse felt different. Daniel had cleared his schedule, canceled meetings, worked from home, and for the first time in 4 years, he was present. Grace came to visit. She stood in the doorway, stiff and uncomfortable. Lucy was on the couch. The boys curled around her like puppies. Can we talk? Grace asked. Lucy nodded. Daniel stayed close. Grace sat down, folded her hands, took a breath. I was wrong, she said. I thought I was protecting my family, but all I did was push away the one person who actually loved them. She looked at Lucy. You didn't stay for money. You didn't stay for status. You stayed because you care. And I'm sorry I tried to make you leave. Lucy's throat tightened. Thank you. Grace stood, smoothed her skirt. For what it's worth, you're good for them. All of them. She glanced at Daniel. Even the stubborn ones. After she left, Lucy looked at Daniel. Did that just happen? He laughed. I think my mother just admitted she was wrong. Hell might be freezing over. That night, after the boys were asleep, Daniel and Lucy sat on the balcony. The city lights stretched out below them. Endless. Bright. Beautiful. What happens now? Lucy asked. I don't know, Daniel said honestly. I've never done this before. Done what? Felt like I was home. Lucy leaned against him. Me neither. He took her hand. I want to do this right. I want to marry you. I want the boys to have a mother again. I want to build something real. Daniel, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I also know that I don't want to waste another second pretending you're not the best thing that's ever happened to us. Lucy was quiet for a long time. Then she said, ask me again on Christmas. Why Christmas? Because if you still mean it in 6 months, then I'll believe you. Daniel smiled. Deal. The months that followed weren't easy. Daniel's business partners questioned his choices. Old friends stopped calling. The press got wind of the story and ran headlines like, Billionaire falls for the help. Some were cruel, some were kind. Most were invasive. But inside the penthouse, life got better. Daniel cut his hours, started coaching Luke's soccer team, helped Max with homework, read bedtime stories to Sam. And every night, he and Lucy sat together on the balcony and talked about everything and nothing. The boys thrived. Luke's anger faded. Max's anxiety lessened. Sam stopped having nightmares. They laughed more, fought less. And for the first time since Sarah died, the house felt like a home. On Christmas Eve, Daniel gathered everyone in the living room. The tree was massive, presents piled underneath. The boys bounced with excitement. I have one more gift, Daniel said. He turned to Lucy, got down on one knee. The boys gasped. 6 months ago, you asked me to wait, Daniel said, to make sure I meant it, and I do. Every single day, I mean it more. He pulled out a ring. Simple, beautiful. Lucy Porter, will you marry me? Lucy's hands flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Say yes, Luke shouted. Please say yes, Max added. Sam was already crying. Lucy looked at Daniel, at the boys, at the family they'd built from broken pieces. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. The boys erupted, jumped, screamed, hugged her so hard she almost fell over. And Daniel slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her while his sons cheered. It wasn't perfect, It wasn't easy, but it was real, and it was theirs. The wedding was small, just close friends and family. The boys wore matching suits and stood beside Daniel as best men. Lucy wore a simple white dress and cried through the entire ceremony. Grace sat in the front row and dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," the boys cheered so loud, the whole room laughed. At the reception, Daniel gave a speech. 4 years ago, I lost my wife, and I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But then a woman walked into my life with a mop and a quiet smile and taught me something I'd forgotten. That love doesn't come from grand gestures or money or control. It comes from showing up, from staying, from seeing people when they're broken, and loving them anyway. He looked at Lucy. "You saved my sons, and you saved me, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know how much that means." Lucy stood, walked to him, kissed him while everyone clapped, and in that moment, surrounded by people who loved them, she finally let herself believe it. This was real. This was home. This was forever. Months turned into years. The boys grew. Luke became a teenager with a smart mouth and a kind heart. Max discovered a love for music. Sam never stopped collecting things, but now he collected memories instead of bottle caps. Daniel cut back his work even more, started a foundation in Sarah's name, spent his weekends coaching Little League and his evenings helping with homework, and every night, he and Lucy sat on the balcony and watched the city lights and thanked God for second chances. One evening, years later, Daniel found Lucy in the boys' old playroom. It had been converted into a nursery. She was folding tiny clothes and humming softly. He leaned against the doorframe. "You okay?" She smiled, rested a hand on her growing belly. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how different life could have been if your mother had convinced me to leave, if I'd said yes to that money, if I'd been too scared to stay." Daniel walked over, placed his hand over hers. "But you didn't." "No," she said. "I didn't." "Why?" Lucy looked up at him. "Because I learned something a long time ago. Home isn't a place, it's people. And you were my people from the moment those boys asked me not to leave." Daniel kissed her forehead. "Best decision you ever made." "Second best," Lucy corrected. "What was the first?" "Saying yes to you." Years later, when people asked how they met, Daniel always told the truth. "She saved my life." And when they asked Lucy, she'd smile and say, "They saved mine first." Because that's what love does. It shows up when everything's broken. It stays when leaving would be easier. It builds families out of strangers and turns houses into homes, and reminds us that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. Daniel never forgot the moment he saw his sons praying. The image stayed with him, a reminder of what he almost lost, of what he'd been given, of the woman who taught 3 angry boys how to heal and 1 broken man how to live again. And every Christmas, they gathered around the tree. Luke, Max, Sam, Lucy, Daniel, and eventually the new baby. They held hands, they prayed, they thanked God for each other, for second chances, for the courage to stay. Because in the end, that's all any of us really need. Someone brave enough to stay. Someone willing to see us when we're broken. Someone who chooses us, not because we're perfect, but because love doesn't require perfection. It just requires presence. And Lucy, she never stopped being that person. Not when life got hard, not when money got tight, not when the boys became teenagers and tested every boundary. She stayed, she loved, she showed up. And that made all the difference. This isn't just a story about a billionaire and a maid. It's about what happens when we stop hiding behind money and titles and fear. When we let people in. When we choose love over pride. When we build families not from blood or status, but from the simple, powerful choice to stay. Daniel Cole learned that lesson the hard way. He lost everything before he found what mattered. He built an empire but lived in a tomb. He had everything money could buy and nothing that made life worth living. Until a woman with a mop and a prayer changed everything. And if you take nothing else from this story, take this. Money can build walls, but only love can build homes. Choose love, choose presence, choose the people who stay when everything falls apart. Because those people, they're the real treasure. And you'll spend the rest of your life grateful you didn't let them walk away. What you just saw is only a piece of the bigger story. In the next video, a twist no one saw coming will be revealed. Make sure you're here for it. I'd love to hear what you would have done in this situation. Drop your thoughts below. I read every single comment. Thanks so much for watching. Show some love by liking, subscribing, and sharing this with someone who needs to see it.